All right, we're here to talk about the entire season, but especially the last episode of Mandalorian Season 3. This is episode 8. We are going to get into some major spoilers. We're going to address some of your questions and comments in the chat, so make sure you leave those there. And I'll explain who's with me to talk about this right after this. Welcome to the Story Geek Show on the Orange Grove 55 network. I officially joined Orange Grove 55, and then I started calling it a network right after that. You just got to upgrade to a network. I love it. We've already got other shows on the channel, so you're already a network. So with me to talk about Mandalorian Season 3, we'll talk about the whole season, but also some of the specific things that came up in Episode 8, the finale. Is OG55. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing fantastic. Really excited to talk Mando finale season 3. Always great to be on here, Jay. I appreciate you hosting again, and first time on the channel, Mike ThatNerdSoul. I'm really excited to talk shop with him as well. It's gonna be a fun time, dude.
Oh yeah. That's right. we've got Michael from ThatNerdSoul, one of my good buddies. He's been on the Story Geek Show. Probably you're in the top 3 to 5 guests in terms of appearances on the show. It's just good to have you. How are you today? How are you today, Mike?
I think I'm okay. I'm not too bad. It's not as sunny as it is probably over there on the West Coast, but we're making it.
That's right. We actually in Colorado just had a rainstorm go through, and then we're gonna get another one coming up in a minute here. But then we'll have 70s next week, so I'm happy about that. OG, nice. Where can people find you?
You can find me right here on Orange Grove 55, where we talk all kinds of stuff. We do a lot of nerd stuff, Star Wars, Marvel, with the Story Geeks with Jay Sherer and the Orange Nerd Show, and we also do a ton of theme park stuff. We talk a lot about the theme parks, Disneyland, Walt Disney World, Universal, deep diving into that. We even deep dive into the corporate world of Disney and all that stuff, the Bob Iger drama and the layoffs and all that stuff. So we do a lot here on OG55. You can find us here on YouTube, and you can find me on Twitter at Orange Grove 55. And again, Jay, nice. I want to thank you for having me on.
Of course. And I will say, there's a lot of confusion out there about what is Reedy Creek, what's going on with Reedy Creek, why is it important to Disney fans, why is it important to the political landscape in general. Follow this guy right here, OG55, if you want to know more about that situation and this channel, because they post a lot about that, and it's really, really good stuff. Michael, where can people find you out on the interwebs?
You can find me ThatNerdSoul at NERDSOUL pretty much anywhere: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of those places. Either hip hop and geek, but sometimes gaming as well. Street Fighter 6 demo just dropped today for the PC players. PlayStation had it first. Boo. But we will be playing some Street Fighter for a long time, and I'll probably enter a tournament this summer. But yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's nice. Awesome. Enter a tournament. That sounds amazing. By the way, I had to tell really quickly the story of me meeting Michael for the first time, because it was a really fun experience. This is not the experience I've gotten, especially since COVID. This is not the experience that I've gotten a lot. But back in the early days of the Story Geek Show, I used to record out of my house, and I did not have a studio set up. I didn't have this fancy stuff behind me. I didn't have any of that kind of stuff. I had a kitchen table in a bad sound environment, and I invited Michael because I was listening to him on the show that he was on. Was it Jedi Council?
Yeah.
Jedi
Council. Yep,
Jedi Council. He was on the Jedi Council. He was on the Jedi Council with Mark Tonica and Alexis Torres. Yep, Alexis Torres has also been on the Story Geek Show back in the day. And I go, hey, Michael, you want to come by my house and podcast with me? And he shows up. He and his wife showed up. And we had lunch together. We had In-N-Out Burger, I believe.
Nice.
Yep. Fun just hung out.
Yeah.
Now, was that the Jedi Council, the Collider with Christian Harloff?
No, that's Jedi Council, which I've also been on. But then theirs was Jedi Alliance, was it? And ours was Jedi Council. I can't remember.
Yeah,
Yes, I've
it was
been on
one
with
of the
Christian
two.
Harloff. I haven't seen
Yeah.
Christian in forever, but of course the pandemic kind of did that to everybody. But I do keep up with him on Facebook. I see him, shining, doing his thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm a
he's
big
doing
fan of
cool
Harloff.
stuff.
He's great.
He also is friends with Katie Sackhoff, so he's had a really cool series where he's interviewed her on his show recently.
Yeah.
So go check out Christian. Shout out to
I was
Christian
one of those
Harloff for
people
today.
sworn
Why
to
not?
secrecy when she was casted as Bo-Katan.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I was like, okay, yeah, I can't say anything.
you had the scoop. Unlike a lot of these YouTubers out here, Michael has responsibility and integrity.
Yes.
That's right.
So just a quick shout out to those folks in the chat. BJ Vincent's in the chat. Matthew Meyer. Actually, let me say this again. Matthew Meyer. I think that's how you're supposed to say it. I asked Matthew, how do you phonetically spell your name? And he told me how to kind of say it. Meyer. Matthew Meyer, I believe is how I saw it. Tell me in the chat, Matthew, if I'm saying your name right. Theme Park Casual is also in the chat, which is always great to have Theme Park Casual in the chat.
Yes.
So we should have a really good stream today. And also, NerdSoul is doing double duty because he's also in the chat. he's got it going on. Okay, so let's talk about this final episode. I'll start with you, Michael. What's your scale of 1 to 10 rating of two different things? 1, the finale, and 2, season 3 as a whole. Where would you put this on the scale of 1 to 10?
1 to 10 because I'm definitely super high on this. 1 to 10, I'm going to say 10 for the finale.
Oh.
I'll slide it back to about 8.5 for the season. But this finale gave me a lot of what I was wanting, and the season I had a lot of fun too. Nice. I think I could have had a little more fun, but I did have a lot of fun.
You can always have more fun. I think there's a song somewhere. OG, what do you think? What is your rating for the finale, and then what is your rating for the season?
Okay, yeah, no, I agree with Michael on this. I thought this was a really, really fun finale. A lot of great, I got to say that the cinematography, all the way they shot some of this stuff was really, really cool. When Moff Gideon, he shot like a rocket at Mando, and you saw it coming towards the camera and stuff. Like there were some really cool shots, like with that kind of stuff, and also with like the air battles and what have you. So I think the cinematography was chef's kiss on point. I would give it this episode an 8. I really did enjoy it. I do think it could have been a little better if they took this episode and the last episode and made one big episode. I think that would have been super fleshed out, like hour and a half, hour and 45. I think that would have made it a little better, but still a solid 8. That's nothing to sneeze at. Overall, the season, I'd give it like a 7.5 and 8. I had a lot of fun with the season. This season gets a lot of kind of shit from fans. People are kind of, oh man, it's horrible, this, that, and the other. It wasn't horrible. It was actually really, really, really fun, a good time. It's hard to compare to season 2 because season 2 had that crazy finale with Luke Skywalker and all that stuff. Yeah. Right? So it's not really like 1-to-1. Like, the last season was like crazy. This season, it did the job really well. It just wasn't as crazy of an ending as the last season, but it doesn't have to be. This show, as Jon Favreau said, this show is going to be going as long as he, like, there's no end in sight. So every season doesn't have to end with like this crazy earth-shattering cliffhanger or what have you. So overall, really fun season and a great finale.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I'm a little on the lower side. So when we did our penultimate show about episode 7, that was a 9 for me. That was phenomenal. It almost had like too many awesome things in it. There were so many reveals. It was great. That was fantastic. This one for me was probably an 8. It's a really solid, really, really solid episode of television. But the 2 last episodes for me were pretty good. What takes away from this a little bit for me is that it didn't feel like that there were things that they were trying to deal with that were maybe not related to the story they were trying to tell. And that was getting in the way of them telling a smooth, consistent season of television story. and I had issues with that. So let me I'll tell a couple of different things and then get your guys' opinion on it.
Sure.
First of all, there was a definite shift, and it happened in season 2 relative to what the purpose of the Mandalorian actually was. And I have a theory about why it was too, so I'll get into that. But it started out as a super Western episodic. There's a through line. We're going to visit different planets and see what's going on outside of the Skywalker saga, right? I love that. Didn't want to see more Skywalker saga. Didn't need more Skywalker saga. I wanted to kind of go through this. I kind of wanted to go through the universe and see different planets and see what's different things going on. Season 2 then got us way more into the Skywalker saga. We had Luke Skywalker literally show up on the doorstep. And then season 3 seems to be like a very big shift in what the original intent of the Mandalorian was. I think that intent is because what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, look, we're not selling merch with the sequel trilogy. We need to sell merch with the sequel trilogy. The only property that we have that all fans are basically in love with is the Mandalorian. So let's use the Mandalorian the way Filoni used Clone Wars, and let's try and fill in the gaps in the sequel trilogy so we can get people on the same page with enjoying it. And I think that to me is not necessarily a series that I wouldn't watch. That sounds really interesting to me. But when you sell me on like a space Western that's very specifically like a gunslinger, lone wolf and cub, that kind of series, I'm super into that. And then this is a little bit less my preference. So this season for me was maybe more like Where Kenobi Falls, which is like a 5.5, 6, even though I liked this ending better than the way Kenobi ended. I like a lot of the Kenobi episodes before it got to the ending. And this one is like the opposite. I love the ending a lot more than the episodes that got us to the ending.
Now, would you say it's interesting with this? Because I feel like the end of this episode is kind of going back to basics, though, for Mando. You mentioned like this lone wolf and cub kind of thing. I kind of feel like we're kind of going back. Like we had all this craziness with the Bo-Katan and the other Mandalorians and what have you. And I feel like they're sort of, and I could be wrong, but I feel like they're sort of setting up the next season to kind of be just the two of us all over again. I mean, I could be wrong, but I kind of get that vibe, though, right?
Yeah, I think that's the vibe that they're trying to send off. Like if we could get back to that, I would be super into that, right? Like that would be really, really cool. In fact, BJ Vincent basically has exactly how I felt about this season 3. I thought the season was a hit and miss season overall. That being said, the final 2 episodes were everything I could want as a Star Wars fan, though. Exactly. That's exactly how I feel about it too, right? Like, and I think that there's multiple reasons for that, but it seemed to me like. Now, let me tell you how this season could have come off better for me. I'll get you guys to respond to this. I think if this season had started adding Moff Gideon earlier on, and we got to see things. So we get all the Moff Gideon awesomeness and the Giancarlo Esposito awesomeness. We get it all in the last 2 episodes. But imagine if we had seen him being broken out of prison. Imagine if that was a cool episode that we got. Now imagine that he had to go around collecting Dark Trooper 2.0 soldiers and then had to start giving them Beskar armor. We could have seen them go up against, let's say, the pirates. We could have seen them go up against Navarro. Any kind of showcase of how badass those guys are in those new suits. Instead, the first time we see these guys in the new suits, they are badass, but then when they fight the Mandalorians, they're kind of just like stormtroopers with jetpacks. They're not super, super duper scary. In fact, they had to add Praetorian guards to make the fear factor kind of go up, the stakes go up. And so I feel like it would have been nice. And I'm sure it was a Giancarlo Esposito didn't have the time to do a whole season, right? Like, I'm sure that was part of the problem. But it did make for a little bit like BJ says, it makes for a little bit of a disjointed season for me. Now, Michael, you didn't have that problem. So what are some of the things that you loved about this season?
In the way that you didn't like the progression from season 1, I actually enjoyed that progression. I felt like this was a guy who was just a guy. And as he made a decision to save someone's life, realized that there's a larger world or a larger galaxy, than just him and his bounty hunter money. And that decision put him on a path to not only meeting new people, helping new people, but then reconnecting with his, kind of like his motherland tribe, and then seeing that, you know, not only is there a bigger galaxy, but being a Mandalorian is bigger than what I know. Okay, if being a Mandalorian is bigger than what I know, what does it mean to be a Mandalorian? And even in the finale where I was talking, I was like, I get it. The Mandalorian isn't Din Djarin. The Mandalorian is the Mandalorians, the Mandalorian culture. This is them coming back, to, of course, they were, destroyed. We saw like the clone, not clone, the rebel stuff where you saw like the the weapon where they electrified all of the Mandalorians there. We saw the Death Watch stuff so this is the Mandalorian coming back together. So I was like, oh, cool, this is great. I love this. We're watching the story of one man's decision leading to the reformation of not only his tribe, but the tribes of Mandalore, and hopefully, I guess, like the spark of like the regrowth. Like, of course, they had like the plants that were already growing, but like the life resurgence on that planet. So that's kind of how I saw it, and that's why I ended up loving it so much, because I was like, okay, cool. There's this guy that makes like kind of a split second decision, and that split second decision kind of, it's almost a coming of age, not only for Grogu but also for himself, because
Yeah.
all he knew was, kind of like the this is the way stuff, and you know they were very, I guess you could say, like very super strict orthodox Mandalorians, you
Mhm.
know. And then like even when he first met Bo-Katan, he was like, "What?" Like, and that opened up his understanding of what it meant to be what he is, and that I just thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
And so in that way, I guess for me, it hit me in a way where I was like, I like this. I like us being more than just, you know, monster of the week. Now it's becoming more of a larger story. And then in this season, with all the kind of the, I guess, triple, double agent, whatever it is, with the young lady that was working for Moff Gideon, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Because at first I was like, who cares about this story? And then I was like, oh, I get it. I was like, I don't trust this girl. I was like, at first I didn't trust her in the first place, but then I kind of trusted her. Now I don't trust her no more. But that was just that. Even that scene was just so sick of her. Like, she waited, and then she watched him as she turned that, like, the, I guess, the buzzer or whatever up. I was like,
Mm.
she is cruel on another level. So yeah, I this season I was like, this is awesome. Even the Jack Black Lizzo stuff, I actually really enjoyed it. Because similar to the lessons that we got from the trip to Canto Bight, even though I think the Canto Bight scene could have gone differently, but I do like seeing a sector of the galaxy that's like, what war? Like,
Mm.
what do you mean? Because
Right.
and I can't remember who it was. It was somebody. What's his name? Gary V. Gary V was talking about 1% and like different people in the. He was like, "Do you think I care who's the president?" And there is. You got to remember, there's a segment of people that are so rich. They're like, Empire what?
Right.
Rebellion who? Like, that's not going to change. That's not going to change anything of the amount of credits we have. Like,
Mm.
they were on Canto Bight like nothing was going on. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? It was chilling. It was, Mai Tais and bikinis. And meanwhile, people are getting chased to their death, with what there was like one ship left. So I actually like seeing that as a slight reminder, like, yeah, there are people that essentially are so rich that this does not matter to them. So I actually kind of like that, because in the beginning, with episode 4 and stuff, we thought it was just like this was it. It was just rebellions and and the Empire, and that was it.
Right.
Everybody
Mm.
else was just like, just struggling trying to get, I don't know, a can of spam or something. And, and now, we have this greater, larger context where, even in season 2, we have like the other like prison colonies and stuff. We learn more from Andor. I like it. I like the kind of the fleshing and the journey a lot more in the season 2 to 3. But I mean, I know it hit me a little different.
Well, you know, Mike, you bring up a great point. Like, you know, especially going into like even Last Jedi, how like, you know, these wealthy people contribute to both sides, right? Of like the empire and the billion, right? And in our world, it's very similar. Like you have these wealthy people, the 1%ers or whatever, who are not impacted by any kind of it's if a Democrat or a Republican, doesn't really matter if you're a bajillionaire. At the end of the day, you're all good, you know. And it was kind of cool to kind of see that kind of like you were saying, that kind of element introduced into Star Wars. You know, I thought that was very, very cool. It inserted some, because the original trilogy was very much like a black and white sort of good and bad, right? And I'm liking what they're doing with this kind of era of Star Wars, where there's that little bit of gray area, right? Like, oh, we're kind of you know, we're given to both sides, so we're always on. Well, we win no matter who wins, basically, kind of thing. And the concept of like, you know, the wealthy not being impacted. I'm digging that. It adds some depth and some layers to this universe. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there are multiple things that we touched on there that I want to get deeper into, because they affect how we view the show for sure, and how we view what's going to happen in the future of Star Wars and where things are going. So the first one I would bring up is like, I think this show shines, and I'll get into this in a minute, but I want to address something else really quick. The show shines when it's about Bo-Katan. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about why the show is so good when it's about Bo-Katan.
Nice.
The show's philosophy gets weird when the show is about Din Djarin and Grogu, because the show started with the title The Mandalorian. I think you're exactly right, Mike, when you say that it turns into, this could be about any Mandalorian, and we switch focuses a little bit, we switch point of view a little bit throughout the course of whatever the Mandalorian ends up being. What's weird to me though is that like, it's a show, it starts out as a show about a foundling who's trying to understand if he has a place in the world. It shifts into a show where Grogu becomes an apprentice or a Padawan to Luke Skywalker. It shifts back to the Mandalorian trying to find, trying to understand what the creed should be and how he lives within the lives alongside the covert, and then alongside Bo-Katan. And then at the end of the season, he says to Bo-Katan, like, I'm loyal to you, like I'll do whatever you need. And then says that, and then
he basically said he loved her.
Yeah.
Like in Mandalorian speak, like he romanticized her on that one. He threw
You're gonna make our friend Aaliyah really happy by saying that, because she was shipping Din and Bo for sure.
It works. It works.
And then so here's where it doesn't work for me, is that the end of the show, he's back to being on his own on Navarro, like not with Bo-Katan at all, even though he just pledged allegiance to her. It's like, man, I'm so confused about where they're trying to take Din Djarin as a character. I think that there's a lot of room for Grogu to go as a character places. I'm just not sure where Din is actually like going to be solidified. Obviously, he's working for the New Republic now. Like he said, hey, send me out on bounty contracts for the New Republic, which, by the way, I think is a great show format, because it goes back to what I liked about the first season, about him going out on contracts and doing different things as a Mandalorian. So let's talk about I want to talk about Din and Grogu and their whole journey through this, because OG, you and I have already talked about Grogu a little bit, and like, and actually there's a comment from Michael Wolfson about that as well. So we're going to talk about Din and Grogu, but before we get to Din and Grogu, let's talk about this show works so well when it's about Bo-Katan. So why is that, OG? Why does it work so well when it's focused on the character of Bo-Katan?
Oh, that's interesting. I think it works well because I think she's just a great character, and Katie Sackhoff crushes it. I mean, to be quite honest, I think that's pretty much, I mean, because I think if you had It's a risky move in this show to focus. You have a show called The Mandalorian. It was initially about Din Djarin and Grogu, right? And then now you're going to shift, in this season at least, you're going to shift over to another character. Mm-hmm. In any scenario, that's risky. That's risky. But I think this character is interesting enough, and you have Katie Sackhoff crushing it, that it works because she holds your attention. She absolutely does. But see, I do disagree though with you slightly on that. It's weaker with the Din Djarin and Grogu stuff. I actually really enjoyed that. I did. And actually, I have a question for you fellas. What if the Mandalorian, like, the show is The Mandalorian, right? And we all assumed at the beginning it was about Din Djarin, and maybe it's about the Mandalorian as a people, like Michael was saying. What if the Mandalorian is Grogu? His journey as a Mandalorian, who knows? But just to go back to your question, I think Bo-Katan's a great character, and I think she was handled really, really well, and it works. It absolutely works. But I still really do enjoy that dynamic between Din Djarin and Grogu. My only issue, and I've been saying it throughout the whole show, that Grogu needs to come into his own more, and he has. He's actually Michael. You commented here. Little guy grew up, and he did. He actually did grow throughout this season. My only issue with him necessarily is, like, I feel like when it comes to the Force, he's kind of gone backwards a little bit, which is odd, right? Because when we saw him in season 1, he was like. And I don't know the name of the creature. That I'll leave that up to Star Wars explained. Like, he knows all that stuff. But that rhino-looking beast, right?
The Mythosaur.
Yeah, and
Grogu. The Mythosaur it's not the Mythosaur, because he's talking about the one in season 1.
Season 1. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's the one in season 1 where, like, go ahead, OG.
It was like a mud monster or something, right?
Yeah,
it was this weird with a horn, and Grogu like uses the Force, and he like lifts this thing off the ground, right? That's season 1. So then fast forward to this season 3, and this is after he trained with Luke Skywalker and all that in the Book of Boba, and now I feel like Grogu's kind of struggling to hold back like 3 of these Praetorian guards, and I'm like, that's a little weird, because first season it seemed like he was way more crazy with the Force than he is now. I think that's my only complaint about his kind of arc so far. He's coming into his own. He's no longer the baby sidekick, but the forcing is kind of weird. Do you guys notice that too, or is it just me?
It seemed to me that his Force kind of came and went depending on how much stress he was in or under. It seems like, and of course he's young. I don't think he's gotten to the point where, regardless of whether it's high stress, low stress, he's got it. He was kind of like running for his life. They're chopping down the little pipes that he's running on. I think that's kind of what he was dealing with, is like not being, kind of like not having the ability to kind of manage that stress. Because then in the end, when it really counted, when it's like, hey, there's a lava type blaze coming around you, he was like, I've got this. It was kind of like when Agent Agent Smith or whatever shot the bullet, he was like, no. And like the fire just stood, he was like, I've got this. And I was like, when he did that, I was like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's his Gohan moment. You know what I'm saying? Except, they're not gonna like, take everything away from Gohan to bring Goku back. But anyway, but that was his moment where he stepped up. I was like, yes, because he had his old school training when he had to get saved, when the whole, and that was an amazing flashback. But he had his old school training, plus his Mandalorian training, plus the Luke training. He's got it. He just needs a little more confidence. I think he needs the confidence.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think so. Here's where I think Bo-Katan's story works really well, and I'll circle back around to you, Mike, to get your take on this too. Here's where I think Bo-Katan's story works really well. First, and I was on a podcast with the Fan Base Press on Monday. It hasn't come out yet, so I'll let you guys know when it comes out. And one of the guests, her name's Teresa. She wrote an article on the Mary Sue called, I don't remember the full name of the article, but the Mandalorians are basically space Jews. And it's 100% right. Like, if you make the correlation, like the correlation, we got the who were the spies, and the spies were actually the 12 Mandalorians who went down to the planet to see what was going on, and they discovered that Moff Gideon was there. And that is a correlation to the biblical story about the 12 spies of Israel who go into the land of Canaan to see if they can take the land of Canaan, if they're strong enough to take the land of Canaan, or if they're not strong enough to take the land of Canaan. And Canaan is the promised land. Mandalore is the promised land. This is a perfect metaphor. It's a perfect analogy for
there's tons of that all through Star Wars.
All through it. Yeah, exactly. And the Mandalorians work really well as an allegory for the Jewish people group in this setting who have been displaced, and then now they're coming back to the promised land. So that stuff works really well because Bo-Katan has the biggest character arc in the show, right? So she starts out and she is alone on a throne of nothing. She is a ruler of nothing.
Right.
And she has to learn, what does it take to be a ruler of Mandalore? And being a ruler of Mandalore is literally taking the tribes, understanding what the tribes' needs are. And when I say tribes, I don't mean the tribe of Mandalore. I mean the different sects or different tribes that appear underneath the Mandalorian banner, and how to rally them together to have a shared common enemy that they can fight against and essentially restore the planet. And so that's why I think that Bo-Katan works so well in this setting. She has a really compelling character arc where she goes from being a leader of no one to a leader of what will eventually be probably some people group that goes to war against Thrawn. That's a prediction, but still, I think that still might happen.
Yeah.
And the fact that she is able to make that big journey and start to build what she was called to build, even though that she got tripped up in her calling earlier on, I think is really, really powerful. So that's why her story works so well for me. I can talk about why Din and Grogu don't work as well for me, but Michael, what do you think about Bo-Katan? Why does that work so well, and how does it work so well?
I think, well, for people that have kind of like followed a good bit of Star Wars, we know her past as well. So we know her sister, what went on with Death Watch, then what went on with Sabine, and we want her to win because we've seen her kind of go through all of this, and we know, even though she tries to pretend when we first meet her, like she's like, whatever, I don't care, this is stupid, like I don't want it anymore. And it's like, no, we see that you have a heart for Mandalore and that you actually care about the people, and you are well suited to do this. Like, it wasn't just like, hey, your sister is the ruler and I just go out on my own thing because my sister is the one that she's the politician person. It's like, no, just because you aren't exactly like your sister doesn't mean that you don't care for and love your planet, your people just as much. And I think we see that when she first meets Din Djarin, because even in that first episode that they meet, you can kind of see her, I guess, softening up to him a little bit. And then the story that she tells about what really went on between Moff Gideon, it's like, oh, okay, we get it. Because she could have, she's Mandalorian. She could have said, we're going to fight to the last tooth and nail. But she saw what the Empire was bringing. And the bottom line is, due to their fractions between, Death Watch and then, what's his name? Darth Maul and everything, they just didn't have the unification to do it. And she said, we are the ones that beat each other. And I think Grogu even understood that when he stood between them saying like, no, 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 because I even said in my review, I was like, from from the mouth of babes, and a child shall lead them. It's kind of like, hey, stupid, we're going to our home where we can prosper and rejuvenate the land that belongs to us, and y'all are fighting over something that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the scheme. Wow, so what? They don't take off their helmets. You do. It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
In the grand
True.
scheme of going back to our home, let it go.
Yeah.
So we see that, this woman has lost so much, and we know how much she really does care, regardless of her like attitude, her external attitude.
Yeah.
We want her to win. And I think that's why it works so much, because of course the actress is dope. And then the character's backstory before it was
Right.
live action, it already has the kind of like the tribulations there. So it's like we just want her to win. We want her to finally make it. So I think that's why it works for me.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and I think having that history is really important with that character too. I don't have as much history with that character, so I don't see as much of what came before. I see more of what's just in this show, right?
Hmm.
And to your point, OG, Katie Sackhoff is like the perfect Bo-Katan. I mean, like
Yeah.
we can't port everybody over from being a voice performer to being an in-camera live action performer, but she ports over like it's like the easiest port over of all time. She just works
Yeah.
perfectly in it, right? So all of those things make that really great. So let's talk about Din and Grogu for a second, because I don't think that they are necessarily main characters. I think they're kind of more like you have A characters and B characters, and I think that they're more B characters in this particular storyline. I think that for me, I think Din does what he's supposed to do in this show. I don't dislike that he's not a main character, by the way. I think it's totally fine that he's a B character. But he basically, what he does in this show is that he follows the creed, but as a foundling knows how important it is to allow other people in. Because the covert by itself doesn't really want all of Bo-Katan's people inside the covert, because they don't agree on some basic principles of how they should operate, right?
Right.
And so I think that Din serves as this connective tissue of like, look, I've been a foundling before. I know how difficult it is. I've removed my helmet. I needed redemption. Let's work with these folks instead of just cutting them out. They're more like us than they would be than they would be otherwise, right? They're more like us than anything else. So I think that all works for me. But what I think it is a little bit difficult when the show has been so heavily focused on Din and Grogu for you to mentally make the shift that the show is not about. This particular season is really not about them at all. Grogu is an interesting one though, because Grogu to me, I remember when we were talking in the first few episodes of this show, I thought we were going to get some pretty big Grogu character arcs. There was a whole YouTube video. It had over, it probably has over close to 500,000 views now. But when I watched it, it was over 250,000 views about a guy. His whole video was, and by the way, this didn't pan out at all. But his whole video was, look in the subtitles. If you watch the episodes with the subtitles on, in episodes 1 and 2, he's cooing all the time. He's cooing like a baby coos. But then in episode 3, he's babbling, and all this is babbling. But of course, in episode 4, he goes right back to cooing, and it didn't pan out at all. It was a week-long video. The guy made a lot of views on that one video, but it didn't go very far because we went right back to him cooing. So I thought we were maybe going to get a little bit more from Grogu, not so much not in so much the fact that he would hear him talk, because I don't think that was a place we were heading. But we talked early on about like Grogu had a moment where he was with Bo-Katan. Din Djarin had been taken by the General Grievous creature. That was a great episode, by the way. I like that episode quite a bit. And Grogu didn't want to go past where some of the creatures were. And Bo-Katan turned back to him and said, you've got to get over your fear. You've got to make this stuff happen or else he's going to die. And to me, that was like a signal of like, cool, Grogu's biggest problem now is he's fearful. And we got to get Grogu to a place where he's not as fearful. And I was kind of hoping we would go there. I think that they probably will go there in a future season. But because, Filoni's playing a long game. And I think Filoni has more influence over this season of The Mandalorian, it seems to me. Now, when I say that, let me rephrase that. Favreau wrote all the episodes. But I think that Filoni is, of all the people in Star Wars, he's one of the only people who one of the only persons who has a global view of what's going on in Star Wars from a storytelling standpoint, particularly this era. And so I think he kind of knows where the moving pieces are. I think Filoni's really good at world building. He's even better at world building than he is a storyteller, although sometimes he tells amazing stories. And I think he kind of knows, like, I'm going to have Grogu do more things in the next season. And I think he's going to do some things. Maybe, I don't know if he'll be predominant in Ahsoka, but if he appears in Ahsoka, we'll get a little bit more character growth there. Filoni's good at that because he's playing a long game. He's not playing a short game. But what do you guys think? Michael, what do you think about Din and Grogu? OG, what do you think about Din and Grogu? Like, did they show up enough in this series? And OG, you said they showed up enough that you thought it was great.
I thought it was fine. I thought they showed up enough. I think what they might be doing from like a storytelling kind of behind the scenes angle. We've heard a lot of rumors about Pedro Pascal maybe leaving, and rumors. We heard also a lot of rumors that Din Djarin was going to die at the end of the season, and you know how that panned out, right? So a lot of these rumors are false in the first place, you know, and people just run with these things, and it's crazy. But the thing is that it could be though that there is drama behind the scenes, right? And maybe the reason why we're seeing a focus on Bo-Katan is sort of the insurance policy, just in case we lose Pedro. We have Bo-Katan now to kind of adopt little Grogu in, and they become the duo. Because you know, I think you mentioned it, Jay, in a past episode we did on this channel, where it was like Grogu can't really. He needs someone else with him. Like he can't do it. Like he's a baby. He's Googling and guiding. You know, you can't just have him. So we have to have somebody along with him. So if Pedro leaves the show, all right, you don't have Din Djarin anymore. Well, now we have Bo-Katan. Now we spent a whole season developing her. Now she can jump in and sort of take over where Din left off. I think that might be an element here. Now, I'm not saying they're going to do that because they might not lose Pedro. But if they do, now they have that in their back pocket if they need it.
I'd say they. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Mike. You go ahead. Jump in.
I think they have more than just Bo-Katan. I think they have Bo-Katan. They have the guy who did the dive bomb of the ship. I can't remember his name. He was kind of you know, mean and rude, but he had the fight with Paz, and he kind of got over himself.
Axe Wolves.
Yeah. So we have Bo and Grogu. We have Axe and Grogu, or the other young lady. She's in WWE or whatever.
Koska.
Yeah. So we have her and Grogu, or Grogu and the other little boy that he fought against. Those two on their kind of like youngling training. So those two with the armorer. So you have, because I can't remember the young lady who does the voice of the armorer, but I love her voice. There's such a, I don't know, like a wisdom and an authority with her voice. How, you know, so I think her as kind of like, even in passing on the knowledge to these two younglings, you know, to kind of like get them up to speed and during their training, I think she'd be awesome for that. So we have a couple of people that could like play around either with Grogu or Grogu and the other young boy that he had to fight against. Because isn't that the same kid that they went and saved? I can't remember.
Yes. It is the same kid. Yeah. Paz Vizsla.
And it's Paz's son.
Yep.
So those are a couple of things that I think that they could play off if Pedro leaves. I don't see Pedro leaving though, because it's like, it's a fun show to do. And
absolutely,
why not get that Disney money and get that Warner Brothers money?
Exactly. And there's rumors out there, you know, rumors fly like Star Wars and stuff. And it's like, especially with this show, I was surprised at how many of the online chatter was completely wrong on this finale. Like I was shocked, like completely wrong, you know?
Yeah. Even the stuff that we were talking about, the stuff that we thought was going to come about, like with the spy conversation and stuff, we were wrong. The only thing that I got right was that I said that, you guys remember, well, Mike, you wouldn't remember, but OG, you remember when I was talking about how the rhyming nature of Star Wars, and it was like he's gonna make clones, and he also adopted the Mandalorian armor, but he also wanted to get the Jedi power, and that those that not quite the clones, because that we're not sure if Grogu is a clone or not, probably not, but we still got the Mandalorians and the Jedi and Grogu facing off against the rhyming nature of what Grogu is becoming, facing, and in that community faced off against Moff Gideon, trying to take on and appropriate all of their cultures, right? Like, so that was the only thing that I was like, oh, okay, I called that one, but everything else, man, that was they led us in a lot of different directions.
They did. I mean, I was even in that last episode, I was talking about like, we were talking about like who could possibly die and all this stuff. And we were pretty like maybe like the armor, maybe like, maybe all kinds of theories. So yeah, they did. They led us in a different direction, but I'm glad they didn't go down that road, at least with Din Djarin dying. I was just kind of relieved because I think he's a really dope character and I love Pedro Pascal. So yeah, long live Din Djarin.
I do like, I will say one thing about Din Djarin and Din Grogu is that another thing that I like about this season is we finally have Din Djarin say, you know what, this is my son. Like, because if we go from season 1 and be like, okay, I don't know what this is, but this is just wrong. This is the baby. I can't let this happen. And then season 2, where he's like, he's trying to be cool, but he does not want to let this kid go. Like he's trying to be cool about it, but he's like, it was a couple tears, but he was like, you know what, he's got to be, he got to be with the Jedi, they're his people. But then Grogu makes the decision to come back, and because Luke does the dumb thing that the people before him did, where it's like, you have to choose this or this. Right. You can only be super duper rigid, and this is why we always lose. But anyway, don't worry about that. We'll get to that later. But but he chooses to come back to him, and then of course their reconnection, and seeing him go from this guy who just is like, well, this is wrong, and to trying to learn how to, okay, well, I can sort of take care of this kid, I guess, for a little bit, and to being like, no, I think this works, and this is my son, and you know what, I want to be a dad. And then seeing the end where he's like, he's just on the porch watching his son, and honestly, that's what I want to do with my son. I want to mow the lawn and watch him play, and then just and that's a good life, especially when no one's shooting at you. So
yeah. Well, and the brilliance of that decision, Michael, like when Grogu had to decide, right, and everyone was like, oh, it's going to be Luke, he's going to go with Luke, right? The brilliance of them deciding to go the Mandalorian path was that we have a really, really interesting character now in Grogu. Because if he would have went the Jedi route, he just would have been another Yoda, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But now we have this Mandalorian Yoda species that's also heavily trained in the Force. And I think that's an interesting character. It's way more interesting than just Yoda 2.0, right? I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. Kind of like a Tar Vizsla and Yoda cross, maybe.
Right.
I mean, if you are to dream and look at all the fan art that's out there with like a cool, like grown-up Grogu.
Well, on that note, I think the scariest thing for Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, the scariest thing is aging Grogu up.
Oh yeah,
because you sell like hotcakes what you have now. The pressure is Disney goes, man, we like selling merch. We like this situation. We like you showing up and getting to go to Disneyland, and you go to Galaxy's Edge and you see little Grogu inside the little satchel, and he makes it. But you all of a sudden have teenage Grogu. Oh man, like we're on another level with like, how do you pull that off without making everybody mad? That's
the brilliance of that the brilliance though of him being the Yoda species. It takes him forever to become a teenager. It was kind of brilliant in hindsight, at least.
Exactly. And how's he gonna speak, and how's he gonna? Because I've seen multiple people criticize and I don't criticize it too much because it is Star Wars, but like whenever he does like a flip jump, people are like, "Come on, man, that looks so dumb." But like, it's fine. It's Star Wars.
Okay,
whatever.
so here's my thing to those people because I did this in my review. Here's the thing. Y'all say y'all want practical. Y'all want it to look as practical as possible, right?
Yeah,
Is that what y'all wanted? Well, then you got what you wanted. You said you wanted cheese pizza. They gave you cheese pizza. Now you crying about it. Like, what you want? Did you want him never to do anything cool? Yes, he has to flip. He's a Jedi. Of course, he's gonna flip.
It's true.
What do you think? What do you think a force-assisted flip is gonna look like? Come on, man.
Exactly, Michael. That's exactly it.
That's flip.
Yeah, let him flip. Well, and that's the thing. That's one of my biggest frustrations with fandom in general. And this isn't just Star Wars. I'm talking like even the theme park fandom. I'm talking just Star Wars, Marvel, whatever. There's like this chorus of like complaints about a thing. The studio will address the thing, and then we hate the thing that we asked for. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? You wanted all these practical effects, and the Grogu flipping to me. It's very Star Wars because we saw a ton of that in the prequels. I mean, George Lucas's prequels have a ton of that. Yes. So it's like, it's very consistent in this universe. Yes. I had no problem with that, but a lot of people did. A lot of people
did not like it.
And I liked it because at first, remember, he was kind of scared. And I love that look where he kind of like looks back to his dad. And it's his dad. Come on. He looks back to his dad and he's like, go ahead. You can do this. And even with my son and like swimming lessons and playing soccer and stuff, there are those moments where he looks back at you and you're like, you got this, go.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I was like, oh man, father and son stories, they kill me, man. They get me all the time. So, so when he looked back and he's like, no, you can do this. Go do what you can do. And so I love that because that was another movement or progression in his kind of like in his coming of age where he's like, okay, it's okay for me to do these things. Like dad said, it's okay for me to be, he's not going to be Kevin Costner telling his super son, oh, just stay right there so I can die. Like, no, he's going to let his super son be super.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. And like when Din Djarin came into that room, and then they were both like Grogu and Din Djarin were fighting those Praetorian guards, and they were kind of like Grogu was kind of helping him out a little bit.
Oh, that was perfect.
That was fantastic.
That
was great because it was like that, like you said, Michael, that father-son thing. And at the very end, he was like, "You got this, son. You did well, son." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." Like that was a moment I think for both of those characters.
Yeah. By the way, Retro Nerd Girl left us a comment there, which you brought up on the screen a second ago, which is very true. He is the golden goose right now with Star Wars. He sells the merch like no other character in Star Wars does right now. By the way, Retro Nerd Girl, if you want to come on the show at some point in time and join us in talking about this, like give us a shout out. We would love to have you on the show. So I want to go back to BJ Vincent's comment over here. Because he says, I was hoping to see Boba Fett make an appearance in this episode. Michael, were you hoping to see Boba Fett make an appearance? Is it disappointing that we didn't see him? How did that work for you? Did you not want to see him?
I don't think it was disappointing. I did think we were going to see him though, because they came through and helped him in his finale. So you have this huge deal of returning to Mandalore. Now I know Boba Fett doesn't really have, I don't know, because we don't know much of his life before we meet him in Clone Wars. But I don't know if he had like a huge life on Mandalore or even a huge connection. But I was thinking, this would be cool because, everyone's returning to Mandalore. Maybe he'll show up and do something real cool. Like it'll be like, one little piece and he'll come in and say, hey, everybody, product placement. Peace out. And so I did think we might see him, but when we didn't see him, I wasn't like, upset about it. I mean, we had people getting sliced in half in midair by a lightsaber. Like this is awesome. So I was happy with what we got.
Nice. What about you, OG? What do you think?
And Retro Girl here says, by the way, just sure, in regards to coming on the channel. So that'd be great, Retro Girl. We'd love to have you.
Oh, yeah. That'd be amazing.
That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, it's interesting. You know what I loved about this episode? I didn't even touch upon this, but it felt so Star Warsy to me. Is the beginning stuff with, I think it's R5, the little droid.
Yep.
That whole thing with like turn off the whatever those red things were, little barriers, right? The force fields, whatever they're called.
Right.
Telling them to turn them off, whatever. I love that. I don't know. It felt very like old school Star Wars. Like that felt like very like original trilogy with the R2 stuff. I thought that was I thought that whole little sequence was really fun. Really fun.
You know what? There is nothing like an imperial job. The Empire has these kind of jobs where they're like, you're just gonna stand behind a force field, bro. Like hours at your day, you're gonna work a 12-hour day, and it's gonna be standing in armor behind a force field, just in case somebody shows up. You're standing there. That makes me laugh a lot.
But it comes in handy. Security is very in a real world context. I watch like local news like all around the nation, and when it comes to like these small businesses, not small businesses like Amazon, real small businesses. So small businesses that get broken into and vandalized, it's like, you know what? Having a security guard should be like your first employee. And even though they don't do much, when something does happen, they are invaluable. So it's, yes, they don't really do much. They kind of like stand there like the guys in Britain or whatever, but you never know. When someone comes, they can all rush them, except if we have a droid on our side that's like, just open one door at a time. And that was awesome. And I bet you they wish they had guardrails too.
Yeah. Guardrails. Yeah.
So Boba Fett, going back to Boba Fett real quick. I think that Boba Fett, so we speculated on this, and I still think this is true. It looks like we're building toward, we know that now we can't trust what comes out of Celebration, because Celebration announces a lot of things, and a lot of those things never come to fruition.
You're down on Celebration again? You don't believe in those movies?
Dude, if I bet on movies in Vegas about that Star Wars would have made, I would be losing money like crazy. I would be broke. But the one thing that they announced was they announced that Filoni was going to direct a film. I think this is the most likely one to get made, actually.
Absolutely.
Filoni was going to direct a film that was a culmination of the Mandoverse. That includes Ahsoka, that includes Book of Boba Fett, that includes the Mandalorian, and whatever other shows come out of it. It would have included Rangers of the Old Republic, or Rangers of the New Republic, but which you didn't get. So in regards to that, I do think that Boba Fett is going to play a significant role. Here's my guess at what's going to happen. My guess at what's going to happen is, and this is why I'm okay with not seeing Boba Fett, to answer BJ Vincent's kind of question or comment, is that I think that Mandalore is going to be an essential planet to battling against Thrawn for the remnants of the Empire, because we know that the Empire doesn't really exist anymore before we get the First Order. It turns into the First Order. So how does Thrawn get defeated before that? I think what's going to happen is the Mandalorians are going to have to get together and make sure that they are a solidified people group. I believe that there are other small factions, because I'm not sure how much the New Republic is going to help with the Empire. There's going to be other small factions that need to band together as well. Well, what is Boba Fett building? Boba Fett is building essentially an army of gangsters. He's building up an underworld, which is going to be able to fund the development of weaponry. It's going to be able to fight against this bigger empire. Probably also put spies out into the empire to try and infiltrate and do different things. And I think they're going to need Boba Fett. And it may be also that Thrawn tries to hire Boba Fett, and now Boba Fett has a conflict. Like, do I go for the money, which is going to be with the Empire, or do I go with helping my former people? He never really was fully a Mandalorian per se, but do I help these legacy people that I know, or do I help the Empire? And which is better for me to do? And I think that makes everything really interesting. So I'm looking forward to Boba Fett's participation in this, but I didn't need to see him in this season because of that. I think it would have maybe distracted from the main purpose of what Bo-Katan was trying to accomplish for me. But that's kind of my take. Michael, did you have any thoughts on seeing or not seeing Boba Fett?
Well, I didn't think we were going to see him, but I mean, like I said before, it might be maybe he just doesn't have maybe he doesn't have a big connection to Mandalore, because since he's a clone, he's still a clone, even though he's a clone that like aged normally. But or this could have gone on and he didn't know about it. Maybe he didn't know, and this is kind of going on at a different timeline. So that could be a thing too.
Yep.
But I'm okay. I think it's cool that he's not there. I think we might see him show up later. I wonder, now that we're thinking about this culmination, will this culmination include Bad Batch people? I'm trying to think of the time. Someone in the chat can let us know, because I know this is all in the midst of like post Purge, aka Order 66, and Episode 4. But I know there's different time. Like Andor is like right up against Episode 4.
Right.
Because I
right up against it.
I
Yep.
assume they're doing like one more season and that's it, maybe.
That's correct. Yeah. They're supposed to end right when they're supposed to end season 2 right where
the movie
Rogue
starts.
One begins. Yeah. Exactly.
So he's like super close to Episode 4. And I guess Bad Batch is super close to Clone Wars, or Episode 3, basically. And I guess this is sort of in the middle. So maybe we won't see any Bad Batch stuff. So yeah, maybe we won't see that.
We will see the Rebel stuff. They're already showing up in a Ahsoka's trailer. Sorry, OG. What are you gonna say?
No, I haven't jumped on Bad Batch yet, and I got to do it because I heard this season was kind of a banger. I got to check out that show.
Definitely.
I love this comment. I love this comment from BJ too, because he says, "I love the Praetorian Guards, and it makes me wish they would make a television series similar to Star Wars Crimson Empire, that series of comic books that focus on the Empire's Royal Guard." Yeah, cool. I totally agree. So here's what's interesting. We talked about this in a previous episode, but like clearly J.J. Abrams had a thing for developing the Knights of Ren, and then when Rian Johnson took over, he went, no, actually that's cool or whatever, but like I'm gonna focus on these Praetorian Guards, and he had them included in The Last Jedi. But I think the Praetorian Guards are an awesome. There's something about characters who you can't see their faces and they don't say much that is really interesting and fascinating and terrifying about them, right? And so, these guys and gals in these Praetorian Guard outfits show up, and I mean, they're gonna bring the pain is what's gonna happen when they show up. So I think that there's something really cool about that. I think that they're the legacy that they have being the guards of the Emperor Palpatine, is
they're the
super
last line
cool.
of defense.
They're the last line of defense. That's exactly it. So that's cool. I'd love to see that. What do you guys think? Would you guys love to see something more about the Praetorian Guards?
Oh, hell yeah, dude. That would be really sick. I would love to see stuff like that, I find, I'm all about the connective tissue. Like I've said it many times on this show, right? Like even with like the sequel trilogy stuff, like I know a lot of fans are like, no, I don't want any Rey. I don't want any of this or that. Sequel trilogy is bad and all this stuff. And even if you don't like the sequel trilogy, I think that you should welcome this ancillary material sort of going in there and putting meat on the bones, right? Because like I said it many times, the prequels were not loved by fans. And it wasn't until George Lucas went in there with the Clone Wars series and sort of filling stuff in, and that was beloved show. And then we got Ahsoka out of that and all that. That's when it started to, that era really kind of like hit with fans. I think there's a potential there with the sequel trilogy to sort of do that, like with Palps and like his contingency plan leading into the Rise of Skywalker. You can do all that stuff, that ancillary stuff, like through TV shows and what have you. So yeah, like that kind of stuff, I would love it. Praetorian Guards, bring it on. All this stuff is dope to me.
I guess on the business side, the problem with the sequel trilogy is that even JJ said it. They had no plan.
Nope.
Exactly. No
They had
Yep.
no
plan.
plan, and it kills me. This is why when I talk about Star Wars and I make up stories and pitch stories and stuff, and people like, oh, that would. I'm like, would it never happen? Because they took $1 billion franchise, had no plan, and just made something. So what makes these people any smarter than me? The idea that they're smarter than me and you is trumped up by Hollywood magic. None of these people are better at making stories than you and I, because we saw it in 3 movies. All right.
Right.
We saw it in 3 movies where cool stuff happened, but it wasn't a trilogy. Cool things
Yeah.
happen
Yeah.
wrapped in aimless movies.
Yes.
Well, they had an aim. The aim was make money, but, but
Yeah.
so the problem, like even with stuff like the whole thing with Finn and Ray, they were clearly supposed to be a pair, but then I guess they pulled the plug. Maybe they didn't want to interracial thing. They were scared of that. Then Ray could have been dope, but then people complained about her, so they pulled back on her a little bit. Then the whole thing with what is it, Carrie Marie Tran, which was, I don't even know who cared. And then like people were just mad. People were just mad because they weren't well thought out movies. Even with myself, I was like, oh, cool, I get it. The Force Awakens. We have these 3 characters. Oh, the Force is, because it's been, dark side so long. Now the Force is just awakening in these 3 people. Like you have a literal stormtrooper that was bred from youth, snaps out of it due to the Force. The Force then awakens in Ray, because the Force has to balance, it has to overcorrect. And then you have this pilot who's great, almost superhuman great, and he doesn't even understand why. Why? Because the Force is overcorrecting, because it has to balance all of this. But nah, they were just like, we want to make movies.
Right.
don't, don't worry about that. Poe, no big deal. Poe does, whatever. Who cares? Finn, whatever. Something will happen. And I'm like, no, this is $1 billion franchise. Y'all said y'all
Yes.
had a story group. What is going on?
Well,
Now,
and
did
Michael, you hit
cool
the
things happen? Yes. Cool thing, especially the light speed, when she went through the ship, that was awesome.
oh
Yeah.
That was crazy.
yeah.
But the movie wasn't really that dope.
Well, and you know, 100%. And here's the thing too: is like with the sequel trilogy, they were scared to take risks, and that was really frustrating because you have 2 characters here with Kylo Ren and Rey at the beginning, right? You had Kylo Ren, who was dark side. You had Rey, who was light side. Rey ends up being a Palpatine at the end of the 3rd movie. It would have been really, really dope, and it would have set up the next trilogy perfectly if by the end of this trilogy, if you mapped it out, and by the end of this trilogy, Rey goes just full Palpatine, like Empress Palpatine. She's sitting on the throne like my grandpappy, right? The whole thing. and Kylo would have been redeemed to Ben Solo, right? And that would have been the end of episode 9. So now you set up the next 3 movies. Now you have Empress Palpatine versus Ben Solo. That's an interesting story.
Yeah, because maybe she goes so crazy that Kylo Ren is like, whoa, what is going on? Like, I never want. And then of course now you're looking at someone who lost his father and lost his mom, and now sees how crazy this whole situation is, and that he's even been roped into this mess. Now he's like, hold up. Like, Uncle Luke was right, this, that, and the third. Okay, we have to stop this. And with that realization now, having, Empress Palpatine, it's all set up for another trilogy.
I'm telling you, it would have been really cool. It would have been really, really cool. But they took the really kind of safe route, unfortunately.
And that's why, hey, over or under, Jay, how much do you believe that this Ray movie is going to happen?
Oh, I give it a 3% chance of happening.
Because when they said Ray, I was like, "Are you sure you want to do that?"
Yeah.
I think I don't have an issue with Ray, but I just know, like, she's not too well liked. But
Well,
if you have a plan and a real story and a fire trailer, you can change everyone's opinion. You know what I'm saying? It just better be really good.
Well, and let me say this. I actually think that Rey is an amazing character. I had Rey in my top 3 characters before the latest seasons had come out. So I got to go back and think about if anybody else would show up in my top 3 characters. I think Rey is a phenomenal character. That's not the issue I have with the Rey film. The issue I have with the Rey film is that everything that came out of Celebration feels like a response to an overcorrection that was made 2 years ago. The overcorrection that was made 2 years ago was, we're not confident that we can make a Star Wars film anymore and have it make money. And now Bob Iger and Bob Chapek at the time are telling us that streaming is of the utmost importance. We've got to do TV shows. So let's cut our movie slate. We're not doing movies. We'll come back to movies sometime. I don't know when we're going to come back to movies. And then Bob Iger comes back and goes, you guys are sitting on top of billions of dollars. You're sitting on top of billions of dollars of revenue for the Walt Disney Company, and you're not making movies. What is going on? And then suddenly, instead of saying, well, no worries, we can bring Patty Jenkins back in to make her film. No worries, we can bring Taika Waititi back in to make his film. No worries, we got Kevin Feige lined up to make a film. They squandered all of that work. They squandered it. They did not pursue it. It did not get anywhere in development. That's only a fraction of the ones that were announced, by the way, in the past. And so they go, we better announce 3 new movies because my boss is pretty mad that these movies aren't coming out. And so I look at the Rey film and I go, it doesn't have a script. They said they're going to have a script in 6 weeks. They announced that Daisy Ridley is coming back. Daisy Ridley, amazing. Love Daisy Ridley. Would love to see her as Rey again. But I have no confidence the movie's going to be made because the director that they associated to, phenomenal director, done a couple episodes. Yes, has done some Oscar-winning type of things in the past, mostly not large sci-fi storytelling. Has done 2 episodes of Ms. Marvel. Cool. Love to see her do more stuff. Have no problem with her at all. But you had a Patty Jenkins lined up movie. She was excited about doing that movie, and that movie didn't make it in. You had a Kevin Feige announcement, the guy who's on top of the world in terms of money making at the movies, and his movie's going nowhere. What makes you think that this is going to go somewhere? Well, it's impossible.
Well, a couple of things about the Kevin Feige thing was dead on arrival because Kathleen Kennedy, isn't a beloved studio head. Whether people like what she's done or don't like what she's done, reality is that a lot of fans don't really dig her, right? You have Kevin Feige play in her sandbox and crush it. She looks real. That's embarrassing. You know what I'm saying? Right?
See, now real quick, I disagree. Here's why I disagree. Because I was in an argument one time with this guy that was like, oh, well, Kathleen Kennedy sucks. She sucks. She's the worst person in the world. She sucks. She's horrible. And she's never done.
We know some of those people.
Sucks. She's horrible. And she's a turd. And then they're like, I love the Mandalorian. It's like, well, you have to give her credit for that, right?
That's true.
If she's the boss, she's the boss. She's the boss for the losses and the wins. You can't say she's the boss for the losses and then the wins is some of the players. It's kind of like the coaches lose, players win. It's like no, you've got to give her the credit for the wins too. So guess who brought the people in? Guess who stroked the check to pay the people for Mandalorian? Yeah. Ooh, that was the turd known as Kathleen Kennedy. so you have to give her props where she's right. Yes, she made some big mistakes. And I don't know who was in the room that said, oh, yeah, we have no plan. Let's just make some movies. And nobody was like, hey, hold up. But she also came through with Mandalorian and a character in Grogu because she was in charge of that. So you got to give it, the buck stops there, right? So you got to give it. So the character for which we've all probably bought 3 or 4 versions of them. I got a Christmas Grogu. I got a regular Grogu. I got a little toy figure Grogu. I got tons of Grogus all over the place. It's a Grogu factory. But I mean, so you have to give her that credit. So if Kevin Feige comes through and makes this money, then it's like, hey, look at what Kathleen did. She knows how to hire the right people, knows how to get things done. Or
That's a
would people that hate Kathleen say, well, Kevin did all that by himself?
No, that's a great point, Michael. That's a fantastic point. Yeah, if he came in and crushed it, that's a different perspective on that. Like, yeah, she's the one, she's the head of the studio. So like you said, the buck stops here, whether it's good or bad. So it would have been, like you said, her decision to bring him on. That's fair. That's absolutely fair. And I can never pronounce I feel so bad. The gal who's doing the Ray movie, is it Charmin Chenoy?
Yeah. Something. There's another. It's a double name. The last name. It's like Obed.
Yes.
Obed Chenoy or something like Chenoy Obed or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Apologies, young lady.
Yes. Apologies. Yes. I think that one's a bit a while. Like, okay, for me, like the James Mangold movie, I think it has a pretty good chance of getting made because like the studio's already worked with him on Indiana Jones 5. And so
if Indy's big, it has a really good shot. And it's also to your point, OG, it's not based on any other material that it has to work with or deal with or solve those story problems. It's coming before anything.
Right, exactly. And then the Dave Filoni thing, again, he's worked with the studio, I mean, continuously. That movie will get made. The Charmin Chenoy movie, I'm just a little bit like we were talking Star Wars Celebration, like what's going to happen, what's not. That's the one that I'm like kind of like iffy because she's done the Marvel stuff, but she hasn't yet worked with Lucasfilm. So we'll see how that relationship works out. We'll see if it happens or not.
She's helming a character that is like the bane of many people's existence. And like with me, I'm like, yo, Ray isn't the problem.
No,
starting a trilogy with no plan is the problem. It could have been anybody. I don't know. The character could have been named Ted. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Like the trilogy would have been a whole bunch of cool things that happened, but the movies went nowhere.
That's exactly it. And the characters that were introduced in the sequel trilogy are dope. Kylo Ren, Rey. I like these characters, but you're right, Michael. It's the story. It wasn't the character. It was never the characters that were the problem. It was the story that was the issue. 1000%.
Also, how Luke was handled, because Rian Johnson is awesome, and I see what Rian Johnson is saying. I get it. Kill it, let it die. But you also got to know who. It's kind of like in Mo Better Blues. He said, if you play the stuff you like, if you play the stuff they like, people will come. Is that stop trying to be all special with this jazz. Play the stuff they want. Play the hits. People have been waiting for Luke to come back in tip-top shape. Yeah. Do not do this. Now, do I think it's a cool take on the character to have someone like, you know what? No, we lost, and maybe we should have lost because we didn't do right and we didn't do this, and we don't deserve the right to be. I get that side, but I also get that there's a lot of people waiting for their hero, ready to see, Hulk Hogan rip the shirt again. So it's like they're waiting to see that. I mean, even me, I thought we were going to see Luke in episode 7 when, what is it? Rey she's using the lightsaber and Kylo's like, that's mine. And then, of course, the lightsaber goes flying and, of course, Rey catches it. But if Luke would have caught it and said, this is mine, theater would have went off. It would have been over. Theater would have went crazy. It would have been done, son. That would have been it. They would have been like, that would have been it. The theater would have went crazy. But y'all are so busy trying to trick people. Give the people what they want.
and that Force Awakens at the very how it ended on a cliffhanger, I think it was a mistake. Yes, it left people guessing, and the fandom went crazy with the speculation for like 2 years, I believe, after that. But here's a problem with the cliffhanger is that you have to start the next movie immediately after. And there's usually, like George Lucas usually had time gaps in between these movies for a reason, right? To start kind of set stuff up in between. With this, you didn't get a chance to do that because if you can't just like leave people on that cliffhanger and then be like, well, 10 years later, now we're here. So I think that was a misstep for sure.
Yeah. We need to have a show on a retrospective of what problems the sequel trilogy has caused for Star Wars. So we will put a pin in that just for now, just because I really want to dig into that, because there's also another. I'm going to introduce two problems, and we're not going to solve them here because we will literally go on for another 3 hours. But I was recently having a conversation with our buddy Modern Mouse, Josh Taylor, and he loves Broom Boy, and I can't stand Broom Boy. So we gotta have a conversation about that. We also need to have a conversation about the changing nature of what George Lucas intended on the about what balance means. So I'm gonna get to John D's comment in just a minute, John. You're the best. Because balance in the original trilogy meant literally meant there's evidence of it all over the place that the light side of the force is fantastic and the dark side of the force is absolutely horrific, and that you should at all times try and have more light side than you should have dark side. That's very clear in the original trilogy. The dark side is not worth pursuing. But in the prequel trilogy, he said there's the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the force. And he started to bring in the Eastern mysticism understanding of what it means to have balance. And ever since he did that, whether it be Clone Wars, whether it be sequel trilogy, whether it be whatever, balance is a very odd thing in the Star Wars universe. And I don't think the Star Wars universe understands what it means at all. So that's another show that we need to talk about. The implications of the sequel trilogy on the rest of Star Wars in general. But thank you, John D, for this. Great show, gentlemen. KK equals the poop emoji confirmed. The 3 movies that were announced, if they get made, would have a high % chance of immediate success if they had proven sci-fi directors lined up, in my humble opinion. So that's from Captain John D. Do we have the drop? Do we have the Captain John D?
Oh,
drop?
I do have the John D drop.
We gotta make it happen.
John D's got his own drop on here, Michael. It's wild. Here we go. We go fancy for John D. We go fancy, and Captain John D says, "Hey BJ Vincent, hey NerdSoul, great to see you on OG 55." So,
man, that's awesome. See, I like that. I like that. That's an awesome logo. That's cool.
I don't want to break. I don't want to break my mental model of what John D is doing in his personal life, but I picture him. His daily vehicle is the Black Pearl. That's my mental model of what's going on with Captain John D. Also, we got a super sticker from Kiki and Luca. Thank you for that. That's awesome. You guys are the best. Thanks for contributing to the show and for being a part of this conversation. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
So we'll end on this question. Well, we can get into some other stuff. We don't have to end here particularly. If you've got some more things you'd like us to discuss in the comments, one thing that has come up frequently is that the Darksaber had a pretty intense history about what the Darksaber meant and why it was included. It also gets destroyed in this episode, in this finale. What did you think about the Darksaber getting destroyed, Michael? Did it work for you, and how, or did it not work for you, and why or why not?
I loved it. Kill the past, let it die. Bo, you don't have this weight, this albatross around your neck anymore. Live your life. Not what your sister would have done, not what your father wanted, not what the ancestors of Mandalore. Create your story. Your song is not yet sung. Go on, go forth, create a new life for Mandalore. I loved it.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's kind of where I'm at with it too. I think it was a ballsy move to do that. I was when I saw that, I was kind of surprised I didn't see more kind of anger online over that. I didn't see a whole lot of anger. I think a lot of people are on the same page as Michael with this, that it was sort of this moment where it was like the ball and chain is off now, right? Like she's able to kind of set her own path, and she's not tied to this thing anymore. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I think, look, there's plenty they can do with the Darksaber. earlier timelines or animation or whatever. I think for this, I think for this season of Mando, I think that was a proper ending, and it signaled a lot for Bo-Katan. So I loved it. I thought it was cool.
It's interesting from a merch perspective because it almost makes it more valuable to go get one.
Right.
Because it's like the opposite of Grogu. Like if Grogu is no longer around anymore, you lose merch sales. But with the Darksaber, it's like, whoa, the Darksaber was cool. Retro Nerd Girl says, get rid of that thing. It was cursed. Here's my only and back actually Retro Nerd Girl's latest comment kind of gets at what I was gonna say a little bit. I wasn't gonna come up with that specifically, but the only thing that I took issue with was that the episode seemed a little bit rushed. So, OG, you said that you could have combined episode 7 and 8 and that it would have fit into like this bigger picture and actually probably would have made more sense for a conclusion, right? This is one of those areas where, to me, it felt a little bit rushed. The example I used when I was on the ESO network, I think it was the ESO network, was that I said, the Martha moment in Batman v Superman, where why are you say that name? Like the whole Batfleck thing. Yeah, like that moment is in when they wrote it down as an idea. It was a fantastic idea. Did we realize that Martha Wayne and Martha Kent have the same first name? And can we use that psychologically? Particularly for Batman, because he lost his mom early on. So the name means something to him. It is trauma in his past. It's a great idea on paper, but when you execute it the way that they executed it, it just comes off as very like cringy, right? I can't think of a better word for it.
I think it's because of the why do you say that name part.
All right.
Yeah, I think so too. It's definitely that like that moment is just not captured on film the way that I think they wanted to capture it on film. Here's where it's not the Darksaber part is not that bad. It's not that bad, but it is sort of like this thing that has meant a lot, that still means a lot. And it means a lot because of what you both said, which is why I think the moment really works and getting rid of the Darksaber is a good thing, is because it means Bo-Katan, you don't need to rely on an object for you to be a great leader, which I think is amazing, fantastic for her character journey. The area where I think that they could have emphasized that even more is if they had some close-up shots of her face of going like, whoa, what did I just lose? And then Din just being able to say, you don't need it. You can lead these people without it. Like those kind of moments to me would have been really powerful moments to see, but we just felt like we were a little bit too rushed in that finale to be able to kind of hone in on some of those moments. And so as Retro Nerd Girl said, having it liquefied, Bo's hand being liquefied would have added to that. Like there's a consequence to this, even though Bo will overcome, right? There's some kind of consequence. There's some kind of emotional reaction that comes alongside it that we didn't quite get. And that's the only thing that I would have said, like they could have upped the ante there a little bit more. And I would have liked that a lot. But to John D's point, Darksaber has a weird history. It's more confusing than anything for casual fans. And by the way, I'm somebody who hasn't even watched a lot of Rebels, so I don't even know a lot of or the Clone Wars parts where they're talking about the Darksaber too. I believe it's in there too. So what else do you guys want to talk about before we close out this show? What else came up? Any comments about things that we should have addressed that we haven't addressed quite yet?
What do you guys think is what's your predictions for season 4? Where do you think this is headed?
Michael, why don't you go first on that?
Well, on one hand, like I was thinking, okay, we're not going to get another season because the end will probably just be, the movie that we get with Filoni. But I guess, because I haven't followed the news, so I guess we are getting a season 4. With the season 4, I wouldn't mind seeing kind of some runs with some runs with Din and Grogu, and then also their relationship as a father and son. and then also kind of splitting that time with Bo-Katan as well. And then seeing how Mandalore is kind of growing and coming back. Because remember they had the dome cities. She didn't think that anything would grow on the planet and stuff. So now those other Mandalorians can be like, no, the surface is viable. And so like seeing like a rebirth on that planet, I think would be great, because I think that would be great for Din as well. So he has this little, he has this like his country home, and then he has his I mean, with light speed, another planet is nothing now. So, so especially when you have something that fast. So, he had his Corvette parked outside, no big deal, So, seeing him go on some runs, clean up some Imperials, and then also kind of flesh out the world with that, because maybe seeing that Shadow Council change and start to form uh, into what we know as the First Order, or I guess this kind of idea was thrown out the window. But I would have loved to see a situation where the First Order is starting to come up, and the older Empire being like, I don't, whoa. There's not, we're not doing that. It's us.
Yes.
Not
That's
you.
interesting.
So I would have loved to see that.
Yeah.
But I guess in season 4, I'd like to see some father son, some training, some learning, and maybe like a slightly bigger. Well, see, we can't be, because he would have to be older. So yeah, we're still gonna have a baby Grogu.
Yeah.
I want a segment of our show where Mike just comes in and pitches Star Wars ideas.
Hell yeah.
That would be the best of all time. So here's what I want to see. First of all, Thrawn is another one of those characters who prints money, in my opinion, right? Like, there's no reason to rush through Thrawn. There's no reason. Like, when they announce this Filoni movie and say he's the end of the Mandoverse, that to me is the destruction of the Empire, or the transformation of the Empire, like Mike said, into the First Order. Well, here's the thing. I don't need that to come for like 3-4 years, right? Like, we can do plenty of content where Thrawn is the big bad, and is doing total nefarious things throughout. So here's what I would love to see in season 4. But I also want to bring this up. I would love to see another season that is called something like Mandalore or something like that, and it's about Bo-Katan building. So I don't really want to see Bo-Katan. Here's what I would rather see. I'd rather not see Bo-Katan and Din have a lot of interaction in season 4, because I'd rather have Bo-Katan rebuild Mandalore and have that be its own show, and then have and they're going to come back together to defeat Thrawn eventually. But I'd love to see Din and Grogu being used by the New Republic for us to see more of the galaxy and more of the goings on in the galaxy. So what I would love to see is things like, hey, we have a new pirate faction that is causing problems on Nar Shaddaa. Can you go infiltrate that pirate group and bring us back this one bounty pirate? Because Vane is still out there, right? Maybe we gotta go get Vane, whatever that looks like, and have the New Republic. That's the promise of the Mandalorian season 1 that I think was really cool, is we get to see parts that are not related to the Skywalker saga, and we're going out into Outer Rim, Mid Rim, into these various planets we've never seen before, and having them deal with bounties, bring the bounties in. It relates back to the New Republic, and then eventually they get brought back in to fight Thrawn. So I would love to see several shows that are all leading towards, hey, Thrawn is doing stuff. It's impacting all of us in various ways. How do we combat these various things that he's doing so that we can build back to being able to fight Thrawn off? That would be, in my opinion, the best way to go overall, because it would just kind of fulfill lots of cool things.
All right, Jay, in your version, do we get to see the ladies' man again? Because if we get to see the ladies' man of New Republic, I'm completely down. But okay. So if you don't know, there's an actor that played the ladies' man in Saturday Night Live skits.
Oh yeah. Tim Meadows.
He's one he's one of the administrators of the New Republic. But I also like to see that kind of followed up, and I see why the New Republic doesn't work, because it's like you guys are so busy trying to not be the Empire that like you're making things worse. And not saying that you need to be the Empire, but just this is way too much red tape.
Yeah. It's exactly. I just want because one of the things that really frustrated me with the sequel trilogy was like it was like the First Order was just there, right? There was no real like explanation behind how they got there, anything like that. It was just they're there. So anything that moves us in the direction of explaining and kind of filling in that story, I'm down for that. So
Yeah.
big deal for me. And also the father son stuff, I agree with you, Michael. I love that stuff. So if I get to see more father son stuff with Din Djarin and Din Grogu, I'm a happy camper. So do those two things in season 4. I'm a happy OG. Captain John D here says, I came in late. Did you guys address the Looney Tunes outro?
Yeah. So what did you guys think of the outro? Did you like it, or did you think it was too comical almost?
What do you think, Michael?
Well, it didn't really bother me, because I was just like, oh, okay, cool. This is the thing we're doing for this show. Like, all right, I can roll with this. It was one of those things where I was like, oh, okay, I didn't expect this, but I can roll with that. That's fair. After getting a episode which I could have had been longer, I'm completely fine with that. I'll approve. You know, I'll approve that.
You know what? It's not Captain John, it's not as unique as you think. They have used that same cut in other Star Wars before. I can't bring to mind what they were. There was I tried to look for an article real quick, see if I could find what the various places they were. It almost was more of a throwback. Now, they lingered on it a lot more than Star Wars has ever lingered on it before, because it kind of like cut down to the little circle and then Grogu's there, and it kind of stayed on that little circle for a while.
Yeah.
And that's unusual. Usually with the Star Wars cut like that, you would get now, I will say this. Most directors at one point in time in their paying homage to George Lucas, they have included editing elements. I say directors, it could be the editors. They've included elements that are the side swipes. Like that's a Star Wars thing. Most of those things are no longer cool to use in film, to be honest with you. Like most of the time, those are seen as like super old school. Like we don't do those anymore. But Star Wars editors have brought them back because they're just paying homage to what came before. So to me, did they linger a little bit extra long on it that made it a little not Star Warsy and made it a little bit more Looney Tunesy? Yes, 100%. But I was kind of like, okay, that was like you're paying homage to the classic Star Wars cuts. So I was okay with it, but it does hit different on a television screen than I think it hits on a film screen. Because like that little circle on a film screen would have been like 10 feet. But like, you know, on my little TV, it's like, wait, where'd he go?
Where is he?
Yeah, exactly. So it hits a little different there.
Yeah.
Oh, Trent listed a comment, said they use it at the end of episode 6.
Interesting.
So there you go. It's at the end of episode. So is that episode?
Thanks,
now Trent, here's the question I have for you. Do you mean episode 6, Return of the Jedi, or did you mean episode 6 of The Mandalorian season 3? I'm pretty sure it's Return of the Jedi, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. Yeah, so Retro Nerd Girl agrees with me. Yes, there is at least 20 to 25 years before the New Order comes to full power. There are thousands of stories to tell before then, in my opinion. I totally agree with that.
Especially if you want to talk about unknown regions and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm still hoping to hear get to see my every man story or every woman story. Every man just as far as human. Well, I mean, I guess it doesn't even have to be human. It can be Togruta if you want. But you know, the every man story. It's a bank teller, or the car mechanic or the bus driver gets swept up into this stuff, and then kind of has to maybe assault on precinct 13 kind of thing. And that could be cool.
That could be cool.
I mean, somewhere in the unknown regions where it's we've already kind of got that flavor where it's like, hey, we're not in the mid rim, we're not on the, nobody cares about us kind of thing.
Right.
So,
Right.
Maybe a situation where it's like, hey, help isn't coming. Like that's it. Like it's us.
Yeah.
That would be cool because we've kind of got it in the animation sense. So I wouldn't be mad in the live action sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where I think you could go with some of the, season 4 of The Mandalorian. Like you could explore some of that by having Din and Grogu go out to some of those areas and try to help out there and stuff like that. By the way, just to confirm, Trent is the hero of the day. He said, yeah, Return of the Jedi was the one.
Yay!
So yeah, good call there.
My favorite movie.
Yeah, it's your favorite movie.
Due to one scene.
Wait, which scene? I don't remember you telling me which scene.
Once again, surprise, surprise, another father-son story. But when Luke turns himself in and Vader comes to him like, so you turned yourself in, hi, we got you kind of thing. And he's like, I realized that you were once Anakin Skywalker, Jedi, Jedi Knight, this, that, and the third. And when Vader looks down, or he kind of like looks sort of down in a way, and he's like, it's too late for me. That thing, it was like, wow, like the body posture, it was like, you could kind of see where he was like, you know what? Now seeing you as a grown man in front of me, being maybe everything that I would have wanted you to be, and I almost feel maybe ashamed to stand in front of you.
Wow.
And that, I don't know, it's from that, it's too late for me. I got so much from that. Now, of course, I'm probably putting my own stuff in there. Who knows? But it's just his body posture was just like, you know what? It's too late. And then him being like, no, it's never too late. And as long as you're breathing, there's a chance.
Right.
But you have to make that decision. And so I was that exchange at the, I guess the corridor where he's getting out of the ship and kind of talking to him before he takes him to the Emperor. I thought that was great. That was a great moment with them too, where, this man, I mean, because in the comics we find out, he finally realizes, hold up, my kids are alive? Whoa, you told me they were dead kind of thing. So to see this child that you had mourned, and now he's standing before you, a grown man and a Jedi, just like you were, and someone who on the inside you could probably be proud of, and then being like, but I've done all of this horrible stuff. Is so it probably hit him like a ton of bricks. And I've always loved that scene. So yeah. And also the all black. Come on, man. He's wearing all black. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is cool. All right, so we'll end on this one. I gotta get to dinner, so we'll end on this one. You guys can keep going if you guys want to keep going. You can go as long as you guys want to, but I gotta head out for dinner after this one. Captain John D says the showrunners need to at least mention Han and Leia in later seasons. Leia was a huge part of the New Republic, and Han was a hero. Having this happen in current timeline with no mention of them is weird. OG, what do you think? Should they mention Han and Leia at some point?
They should. I think they should. I mean, you don't need to spend a lot of time on that, but we've already seen Luke in season 2 and in the Book of Boba Fett. I think you should continue that continuity and at least have them peppered in a little bit here and there. Like I said, you don't need to like really focus on that, but you should definitely include it.
Yeah. What do you think, OG? Or sorry, what do you think, Michael?
At first I was thinking maybe we're not hearing about them because since it's such a big galaxy, maybe we just don't hear about them at all. But now that we're getting more conversations with the New Republic, it does kind of make sense to maybe hear about them every now and then, especially since we were on Coruscant. It was surprising to not maybe like maybe see a poster of them or someone talking about, like the updates on what's going on, or, anything to like, kind of bolster the troops inside of the offices with the ladies' man and everything. Kind of like, like the posters that are like, hey, this is going on, or these are updates, or maybe over the intercom, like hearing, maybe like a new victory or something like that. So maybe it is time. Maybe it is time to kind of at least, I guess we can't see them, but maybe maybe hear about a venture, an adventure here or there, and kind of like how they're doing or something like that.
Absolutely.
I would love, this would be amazing, to get a scene with Tim Meadows processing paperwork with Han Solo and been like, your name's Solo? That's so lame. How'd you get that last name? That would be
That'd
awesome.
be great.
Now,
And they'd be like, well, you see, there was a guy just like you.
yeah, exactly. There was a guy, he seemed a lot like you, but not as cool. So here is, I will rant and rave all day long about wanting to get away from the Skywalker saga. And you both have heard me do that before, so I'm not going to get into that. However, I think that Solo is an underappreciated film. I don't think it got the credit it deserved. I think it's a fun film. I don't think it's a phenomenal film, but it's a fun film. I think that Alden Ehrenreich did a really good job as Han Solo, honestly. So would I hate an episode where Alden Ehrenreich is playing Han Solo and trying to do something, maybe smuggling something into Nar Shaddaa, and all of a sudden Din and Grogu show up and they encounter him, and maybe he's a part of that one episode? I'm actually here for that, despite the fact I want to get away from the saga stuff. Like, I would watch that and I would be stoked about it. So, I feel like he got the Star Wars hate train the way that Jake Lloyd and
Ahmed Best
got the same thing. It's like, man,
shouts out to his redemption.
Yeah, exactly. He needs to come back for that. Captain John D says he asked Solo for his TPS reports. That's awesome.
I actually have a drop for that. Hold on one second. John D, I got a drop for that.
Another drop.
I just stare at my desk, but it looks like I'm working. I do that for probably another hour after lunch, too. I'd say in a given week, I probably only do about 15 minutes of real, actual work.
There we go. TPS report.
That's so good. That's so good. So what you're saying is you have a motivation problem? That's so good. Well, gentlemen, first of all, I'll start with you, Mike. Why don't you tell the folks where to find you and what you're up to next?
This was super fun. Talk Star Wars all the time. Next we have we got some Street Fighter 6 footage coming. I'm going to be playing that. We're going to be talking anime on Sunday. What else do we have? I know there's some rumblings, and I have some people that might want to talk about Flash. I guess we can talk about the Flash a little bit, but we also have, we're not too far. We got about a month until we get, Spider-Man. We got some cool stuff coming, and we're almost in May. And there's one thing in May that you got to talk about, and that's family. That's right. We got if you got to drive fast, you might as well drive fast with family. So yes, we'll be talking about Fast and Furious as well. But yeah, that's pretty much what we got going on in the very near future.
Awesome.
But you can find me at NerdSoul anywhere, NerdSoul, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, podcast, all that jazz. Just stop by, say hey.
Perfect. And Michael, I just want to let you know too, I will be linking your channel, your YouTube in the description. So everybody at home, if you're watching this on the replay, check it out in the show notes below. Subscribe to Nerd Soul right now.
Yeah, absolutely. OG, what's coming up on this channel?
Well, we got a busy week ahead of us because we got the Disney layoff news, which we're going to dive into that. We got that that crazy phantasmic situation with the dragon that was like a 40-foot tall flame that went up. That was insane. We're going to dive into that this week. So a lot of interesting stuff on the horizon. We also even got some Comcast news. I guess Comcast Universal, I guess they're the studio CEO had some issues and got fired, and what the ramifications of his firing are for not just Universal, but even for Disney, because Disney's trying to work with Comcast in regards to the Hulu stuff, right? Is this going to impact maybe Disney selling Hulu to Comcast or that whole situation with this guy gone? We'll dive into that as well. So, but you can find it all here on OG55, and you can catch me on Twitter at Orange Grove 55. And Michael, I want to thank you again for coming on, sir. It was really fun talking Star Wars with you.
Yes,
absolutely.
Thank you.
You can always talk Star Wars with Michael all day long. It's the best. Yeah, so I got a couple things. I just today got my tickets for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I am insanely excited about Volume 3. We'll be seeing it next Friday, so I'm sure that we will also do a show about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 on this channel here on the Story Geeks. So definitely follow us for that. We will for sure be doing a show on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and we will almost certainly be doing a show on The Flash. In fact, Retro Nerd Girl, if any of those sound cool to you, let us know. We'll also do a show on the retrospective of what the sequel trilogy caused problems with. I know Dre will like that one, so we'll wait for Dre to be on the show for that one as well. And then also last announcement from me, over on the How Stories Work channel, not anytime real soon, but I am trying to get a table read of our latest short film going. So if you want to see our latest short film, it's in the top 8% of short scripts on Coverfly. There's over 45,000 projects on Coverfly, so being just in there is really good. You can check out all of that stuff on How Stories Work with Jay Sherer. That's my other channel, so go check that out as we create a short film. We are definitely filming that short film this year. In the meantime, I think we're going to do some table reads and put them on YouTube and things like that as well. So that will be really, really fun. But it has been a pleasure, gentlemen. If anybody wants to follow me on Twitter, it's at Jay Sherer. Michael, love talking to you as always. Yes. And by the way, you can sometimes find me on Michael's channel because sometimes I come on to talk with him about Star Wars over there. So definitely check that out as well. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great rest of your night. And I guess we're kind of midweek, so we're not approaching the weekend, but I hope everybody has a good weekend as well. Shout outs to Captain John D. Shout outs to Retro Nerd Girl. Shout outs to BJ Vincent. Shout outs to Trent. Shout outs to
Matthew Meyer.
I think that's how he told me to say it. So I'm real, if you say it like it's, he told me this. He goes, if you say it like it's Irish or Scottish, you can nail it. So it's almost like Matthew Meyer. It's like Matthew Meyer. There you go. Also to Kiki and Luca for showing up as well. I want to make sure I get everybody, so I'm scrolling up here for a second. We also had a couple comments from Kevin Davis. Thank you for that, Kevin. And Michael Wolfson. Thank you for that. It was a fantastic show. Glad you closed out The Mandalorian with us. And hope everybody has a great rest of your week. Talk to you later.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.